Hi and welcome back to Prep Bytes. In this video, we're going to be going in and setting up our routes for our UI application, our React application. So far, what we've done is we went in and we built up all the requisite or necessary components that we will be requiring in for our chat application, right? We've created out our online users or available groups, the chat area, the welcome page, and the login page as well. So we created out all of these components, but now the thing is we want to be able to go in and switch between them, right? So we also want to keep in mind that, yeah, the sidebar needs to stay there and all the other components needs to be rendered to its right hand side. So we'll be going in and implementing that in this particular video. So we are going to be utilizing an additional library for going in and setting this entire thing up. And it is nothing but the React Router DOM. Okay, so in order to go in and get started with React Router DOM, it's fairly simple. You install the library, then you can go in and wrap your entire app with your particular router of choice and then provide your routes. So the three-step process that you need to go through altogether. So before I go in and I start creating up all the routes, let's kind of brainstorm on how exactly is it that we need the routing to be done for this particular app, right? So the idea is that whenever I go in and I load up a particular component, my URL should change, right? Okay, so if that is the case, see, the very first component that we're going to be starting off with, the very first component that will be displayed is going to be a login page, right? So the login page is going to be a very first component that is going to go in and get loaded. So this is going to be the very first component, right? Now, apart from that, once you go in and you sign in, okay, so once you log in successfully, we have to go in and take the user onto the welcome page. All right. So the welcome page would go in and contain the welcome message as in such with the logo. So we already had created the component for this and it somewhat looks like, yeah, so this is how it would go in and look like, right? So this is the welcome page. And from here, the user will be able to go in and access the sidebar so that he can go in and navigate to other routes so that he's able to he's able to access the other components. Okay, so this is the idea here. So in order to go in and achieve this, what we'll do here is, let me just go in and list out all the components we'll have to go in and render out. So the welcome page, surely, yes. Okay, apart from the welcome page, we also have to go in and do it for the chat area. So there's going to be a particular route we'll have to set up for the chat area. And there's going to be another route for online users and then available groups. And last but not the least will be our create group component. Okay, so these are the four components that we are gonna go in and like giving routing so that we are able to go in and switch across all of these applications and also change our URL as well. Okay. All right, so let's just go in and get started. So what I'll have to go in and do first and foremost will be to install this particular library. Okay, so let me just go in and take you through back over here. So this is the list of let me show you the list first and foremost. There you go. So these are the list of components that we'll have to create routes for. The login page, which is going to be our main landing page. So if you go in and you put the URL of our application, you will be starting off with the login page unless and until you're authorized, which is something we'll be going in and doing later on, authorization authentication. So when you're authorized and when you're authenticated, you will be sent down to the welcome page. From the welcome page, I'll be able to change my routes to either access the chat area or the online users, the available groups, or the create group components. Okay, so we'll be adding in a few more routes later on ahead when we'll go for the mobile view. But for the time being though, we'll just set up a basic routing schema for our UI application. Okay, so in order to go in and get started, I'll just jump into my VS Code over here, open up my terminal. So this one, we already have it for running our development server. I'm going to create one more. And in order to install this particular library, it's fairly simple. You're just going to go in and write npm install react router DOM. Okay, so this will go in and take care of the installation for this particular library. Now React on itself is also a library. So if you want additional features, the thing you need to do is just go in and add all of those additional libraries onto your React application. So that's what we've done. Now, if you go in and check in your package.json, you should have the React Router DOM library installed in it. Okay. Now, the next step would be to go in and wrap our entire application with our browser or our router of choice, right? So the React Router DOM library provides us a bunch of routers. I'm going to go with the browser router here because this is what we'll be ending up using like 99% of the time. Okay. So let's just go in and get this integrated into our application. So I'm going to just jump into my index.js. And what we'll go in and do here is we have to go in and use this browser router component, okay, from the React Router DOM library. Okay, so this is the browser router component, and we are going to go in and wrap this particular app component of ours. Okay, so we need to provide the routing to the whole application, right? So we're going to go in and provide we're going to wrap our browser router component. Okay, so it is again a React context. So the idea is that it will be accessible across all of the child elements. So that's not going to be an issue. So once this is done, now we are all set to go in and define our routes. Okay. So in order to go in and do this, I'll be doing all the routing within my app component over here because this is kind of the part where, all of the routing that we are going to be performing are going to go in and, come across, right? So here, this is the very first point I'll say, because as you can see, we have the login component, which is to be went in and displayed initially. So our main landing point is going to be our login page, right? This is our login page, and this is where you're going to go in and land. If I go in and click on the login page, once I get authenticated, I'll be redirected, or I'll have to go in and change the component that is being rendered out to that of the main component. Okay, so there is going to be a routing that I need to provide between these two components. So the main landing point will be the login component, and after I authenticate, I need to change the route so that the main container, which has our overall application, to go in and get rendered. Okay, so what exactly should we go in and do for creating up our routes, right? So the process is really simple. We'll have to go in and set up our routes using the route component. Okay, so the very first thing I'll go in and do is basically just go in and import. So we have, okay, so in order to go in and create these routes, the very first thing we'll have to do is to get access to this component called as the routes component. So all of the route that we're going to create, we're going to be creating multiple routes. Each of those route is going to be present within the routes component, right? So I'm going to go in and get that imported out over here. And within the routes component, I can go in and set up each an individual ones or each and every other route that my application is supposed to go in and have, right? So I'm going to be using the route component to go in and do so. Okay, so what I'll do is we'll have to now go in and set up all of the routes. So the way this works is that this route component takes in a bunch of attributes, a bunch of properties, right? So the props that we need to go in and give to this particular component is the very first one will be the path. Okay, so this is the very first component that we'll have to, attribute that we'll have to go in and specify, which is the path. And then we can go in and specify which element is to be went in and rendered out. Okay, so this is all we'll have to go in and do. So for example, I don't need to go in and display out the login component here for any particular reason, because I'll set my login component to be able to be that of my root directory, right? So if I'm putting in localhost 3000, my login component should go in and show up, right? So this is my landing page. So I'll just go in and specify the element to be rendered as that of the login component. Okay, so the login component is fine. Now, apart from this, once the login has been authenticated and authorized, on clicking that particular button, we need to be able to go in and authenticate and authorize. Sure. After that, we need to go in and redirect ourselves so that the main container is now going to go in and get rendered out. Okay. So I'm going to create one more route over here. And the idea here is to use nested routing. Okay. Because the idea here is that within the main container, my sidebar has to remain fixed at every single point of time, right? So what I'll do is, I'm just going to go in and set up the routes here, right? Let's just go in and get the welcome route and all of these additional routes set up. but the idea here is to go in and wrap them inside of another component, right? So what we can do here is, rather than specifying the element, what we can do is, let's just specify this as app. Okay, so what we're doing over here is that all of the elements that we are going to go in and create are going to be nested inside of it. Okay, so we have the route element, and so we're going to set it as app. And here we're going to go in and render out our main container. Okay, so this will kind of help us to go in and route everything up. So all the other components are going to be loaded in when the URL changes to localhost 3000 for the time being. In case of our development server, it's going to be localhost 3000/app/welcome. Okay, so my main container will be rendered out fine for app, but I want like these specific components to go in and get displayed out, right? So I'll be doing some nesting here. So inside of the main container, I'm going to go in. So as you can see, I'm going to do a bit of nested routing here, right? So within the app, I'm going to go in and add in a few additional ones. One will be for welcome. Okay. And here the element that we're going to go in and render out will be our welcome component. All right. Let's just go in and get this set up over here. So we have a welcome component. And apart from this, we have to go in and provide routing for the other set of components as well. So let me just go in and quickly take care of that. All right, so these are the routes that I thought we can go in and set up altogether for our application to go in and work. So as you can see, like the moment so let me just take you into my browser over here. So the idea here is, so at localhost 3000, which is our root directory, at a root path, the login page will be there. And now after that, if I go in and I change the the URL to that of /app/something else, I should be able to go in and render out those particular components, right? So let's just go in and see if this particular thing works properly or not. So I'm going to jump back into the app, and we're going to just change this to localhost 3000. And there you go. So for localhost 3000, so the moment the app loads in, your landing page is going to be the login page, right? The login page component goes in and shows up. So I can go in and type things up over here. I'll click on login. It'll go in and do the authentication and the authorization. Once that is done, it will go in and take me to the app/welcome URL. So this is the route that he specified for going in and displaying the welcome component. Now, as you can see, the welcome component is not getting loaded over here because we have not written the logic, or we haven't set up the right routes so that the corresponding component goes in and gets loaded out. Okay, so in order to do this is fairly simple. I'm going to just go in, directly jump into my VS Code over here, and within the main container, okay, there you go. Right now we are just going and rendering out the users component regardless. Okay, but what we want to do is the component that is to be rendered out. So for example, if I'm saying the URL is going to go in and change to localhost 3000/app/welcome, what I want to do is I want to go in and render out this welcome component inside of this main container. Okay, I need to get it rendered out inside of the main container. So see, the thing over here is all the routes are going to get set up here itself. We can set up every single route that your application is going to require in the single routes component. Okay, and that's the way you should do it. But what I want to do now is I want to make it so that this welcome component, this chat area component, this users component, the groups component, and the create groups component, all of these groups, all of these components, rather than going in and being over here, we are not going to do any conditional rendering, but rather we're going to use our React Router DOM library and its pre-built outlet component to go in and render a component inside of another component. Okay, so this is the component we're going to be going in and using. It's called the outlet component. And if I scroll all the way up, there you go. So as you can see, the outlet component has been imported. And now what would happen is if I go in and I change the URL in whichever format or whichever way I want, the corresponding component, so whichever component that I'm specifying over here, whichever element I want to go in and get rendered, it's not going to get rendered here and here itself directly, but within the main container. So onto the right hand side of the outlet, this is kind of the best thing that is happening here. So whatever is the element, whatever is the URL, it is going to go in and render out the corresponding element here, okay, in place of this outlet. Okay, so if I take you back, we should be able to notice that the welcome component should show up. There you go. So the welcome component shows up there as it should. Now, if I change this welcome component and change it to maybe, let's say, chat, all right. So we are getting in an error here saying that undefined properties, undefined of reading name. Okay, let's just go in and check what the problem is. Because I'm pretty sure I might have went in and passed parameters or props while rendering out this chat area component. Yeah, I definitely have. Okay, so conversations of zero. So we have these conversations here. Okay, so what I can do here is, let me just go in and take these conversations and I'll give it directly to my chat area component. Okay, so I'm gonna just keep it in here. All the data fetching and everything, once we go in and start working on our backend, we are not going to be needing the static pieces of data. Now, the only reason I made it in this manner is so that it would be easier on for us to go in and integrate our backend with our front end. Okay, so conversations, we have all of them one at a time. So what I'd say is, okay, so I'm just going to create up a variable over here. Let's just call it as props so that we can take care of the scenario or the situation that we are in currently. So I'll say conversations of zero. So this is just some static data because I want to go in and render out this component depending on the data we'll get from the backend. Okay, so conversations of zero, this should go in and sort out our problem. All right. So wait a second, let me just quickly check. Our use state is not defined. Let us just quickly import it. I'm going to do control space. Let's get it imported. And there you go. Okay, so that kind of fixes our issue. Now, if I come back over here into my browser, you can see the chat as well. The chat works as well. So if I use users, you can see the online users will show up. I also took the courtesy of creating the groups component as well, which is basically nothing but this. I'm just reusing the same users component, but this one will go in and display all the set of groups that you can see here. Okay, so this is also working in as it should. Another component that we also want to go in and get rendered is the create groups component. So if I recall correctly, the path that I gave was called as create groups, and there you go. So you'll be going and rendering the create groups component where you can enter the you can enter the name of the group and click on this button and it'll create that particular group for you. Okay, so all in all, this is pretty good. Now, what I want to do is I don't want to go in and change the URL at every point. I want to use these buttons to go in and render out these components. Okay, now this would be fairly simple for us to do because we can easily go in and use the use navigate hook to perform the routing for us. Okay, so I'm going to jump back into VS Code, and here within my main container, I have my sidebar where all the buttons are now available. Okay, so what I want to do is we're going to be using in a particular hook over here, which is called as the use navigate hook. Okay, so this is again a hook which we are able to go in and get from our React router DOM library. And the main advantage that we get with this is that it basically just gives you a function, and that function can be utilized to go in and change your location. You can change a URL by using this particular function that will be returned by use navigate. Okay, returns you a function, aka a method. Okay, so I'm gonna go in and say const, let's just give this function a name. I'll say navigate. Okay, so this is a function that I can utilize to go in and change my routes. Okay, so what exactly are we going to be doing in here? So what I can do is if I click on the person add icon, so it should go in and show. So what I'll do is onto this icon button component, we can go in and give it an on-click event. Okay, so we'll add in an on-click event here. And what we want to do is we want to go in and change our URL. Okay, so I'm going to give a callback function here, and let's just invoke this function that we created called as navigate. And to this function, all I need to go in and do is to just specify the route that it needs to go in and navigate to. Okay, so I wanted to go in and take or navigate to app/users maybe. Okay, so I'm going to just save this, jump back into my browser. Okay, now if I click on this button, let's just go in and see. Okay, it's going app/users. Okay, just a second. I guess we're already in app. Okay, understood. So I didn't think I'll need to go in and set it up as app because we are already within the app. So I'm just going to give /users. Okay, so just users is all that we're going to be going in and needing right now. Okay, so if I were to go in and do that, let's just see. I'm going to take you back into the browser. Okay, so right now we are in the create group component. So if I click on this button, there you go. You can see the online users component goes in and gets loaded up. All right. And for some apparent reason, I guess we haven't maintained the 30-70 ratio here. So we'll go in and check that out as well. Okay. But as you can see, if I click on this button, all the online users will go in and show up. All right. Similar to that, let's just go in and give this same functionality to our the group add icon button as well. So I'm going to just add this in, but here I want to go in and set it to groups. Then we have the add circle, which has to go in and change this to just, let's say, create groups. Okay, create groups. So these basically match with the same routes that are specified over here, create groups, right? So I just need to make sure we are writing the same name, because if I mess up the name, the routing will not happen. Okay, because if I mess up the name, then the URL will change and there is no component that is specified to that particular route. So nothing will go in and get rendered out. We have a button for this toggling night and the light theme, which we'll go in and address in the next video. Okay. So for now, let's just go in and see if the routing that we have implemented is working in fine or not. I click on the create group icon. Okay, that works. I click on available groups, online groups, available groups. All of these are working as it should. Okay. Now another thing I can do is, so if I'm going in and clicking on any of these users, okay, or any of these conversations that I have within my conversations tab, what we can do is we can go in and render out the chat area component. Okay, so what we'll do here is I'm going to just jump into my sidebar over here, and within the sidebar I have this this component called as SB conversations, right? So it's going to go in and render out a conversations item. Okay, so what we can do is let's just give it a bit more styling. All right, so I'll open this to the side. There we go. And what I'll say is, let's open up a conversation item, and this is the conversation container. All right. So what we can do is let's just give it a bit of, like when I hover on top of it, if I click on it, I want some animation, right? So what I'll do here is I'll say dot conversation container, or I'll just copy it. That makes the whole process way more easier. Copy this, paste it. Okay. And one is going to be for hover. Okay, so if you hover on top of this particular element, then I need the background color to go in and change, right? So what we can do is let's just specify the color. I'm going to give it a random color for the time being. Okay, so I'll just take this and open this one up again. And on hover, I want the background color to go in and change. Okay. So that and all is pretty good. Now for each of the elements, we are giving it a bunch of padding. Okay, so the padding, I'll say we can get it removed out, and we can also remove the border radius so that it goes in and shows up properly. Okay, so that and all is also pretty good. We have the conversation container with all of the items that we need. And I'll also remove the margin as well. Okay, so I'll say let's keep the margin and the padding. Okay, so that at least we'll be able to notice the change. Okay, so this is pretty good. Now if I click on it, I'm gonna give it another action, which is another state, right, which is the active state. There you go. So here I just wanted to go all white right after that, and I'm gonna give it a small transition duration. I'll say transition duration of 0.5 seconds. Okay, so on doing that, I guess we'll be able to go in and get that feature, right? So let's just see what change did this bring. So as you can see now, if I go in and hover on any of these conversations, yeah, I'm able to get the clickable effect as well. Okay. All right, so what I can do now is I can, on click of this particular sidebar conversations, let's say I want to go in and load up a particular conversation, right? So this is kind of the reason why I did that part where, the data automatically goes and gets loaded up. So what I can do here is, again, fairly simple. So if anyone goes in and clicks on this conversation item component, I can just go in and say on click, I want it to go in. Oh, so let's just bring in the navigate function here as well. So I'll say use navigate. This use navigate hook again, much like I said, returns you a function. Okay, so you can give it any name that you want. I'm gonna give it navigate. All right, so navigate, and here I'll just go in and say, all right. So the moment you go in and you click on this, let's just call a callback function, which in turn is gonna go in and call our navigate function. Oh, there we go, and then we'll change this to chat. Okay, I guess it's chats. Let's just quickly check it. So in app component, it's just chat. Okay, it's just chat. There we go. So I'm going to save this up. Okay, everything went to the side. All right. So use navigate. Navigate has already been declared. Navigate. Did I import something else? Oh, I done it twice. So apparently I done it twice. Okay, so let me just save it up here. So what we want to do is on click of this particular component, which is our conversation item, we want to go in and run this particular part so that the navigation occurs, right? So navigate is the same thing as before, right? So I'll just specify this. Just a quick second. Let's just check the elements once. Oh, let's just give it to the, okay, rather than that, I'll say let's just give it to our conversation container. Okay. All right. So let's see if that is gonna go in and work as we want it to. So we'll get our navigate and let's just put it up here. Get inside of the function. There you go. And we will ensure that we are importing it. There you go. So that should go in and take it so that we are able to do the routing for the conversations. Okay, so let's see that. So this should mean that we should have a complete application. As you can see, if I click on this, I'll get the online users. I click on this, I'll get the available groups. I click on this, I'll get the conversations for that particular message, right? As you can see, it kind of makes the whole process way easier. So we have a pretty decent working, UI component here. And we have the online users, we have the available groups. We're making some subtle changes here and there, left and right, so that we can make it to look a bit more material and minimal. But for the time being though, as you can see, it does do the functionality with a bit of routing. Now it finally looks like it's a proper application altogether, right? Okay, so this is gonna be our landing page. So once you put in your user ID and your password and it's authenticated, we'll be sent down to this route, to this location, which is whatever is your root directory /app/welcome. And from there, if I want to go in and access all the online users, I can click on this, changes the URL as you can see, and I'm able to see all the online users. If I click on the other button, which is for seeing all the available groups, it goes in and shows to them as well. I can also go in and create groups over here that have, if you want to create a group, you can add in the name, click on the plus button and it'll get created. And then within the conversations page, we have a bunch of conversations that I already went in and threw in. If I click on them, you can see the corresponding chart will also go in and get loaded up. So this is just a UI mockup of what the chat application that we're trying to make, even though it has no functionality at the point. But with a bit of routing, I would say it gives it a bit more dimension onto its existence, I'll say. So it feels much more like a proper complete app right now with the routing. Okay, so this will be all for this particular video. In the next session, we're going to go in and see how exactly we can go in and utilize Redux so that we can provide the theme toggle option in our chat application.